The topic that has been given to me today is research integrity. So, whenever I am asked to speak on something, my first method is to look for the meaning of the word. Research is something that you have been hearing about the whole day. So, let's look at what does the word integrity mean. So, I looked it up in the dictionary, and these are a few statements that I found. The quality of being honest and having strong moral principles that one refuses to change. Firm adherence to a code of values, especially moral or artistic. And here we can replace that because we are talking of science, of moral or scientific. And the third dictionary said adherence to moral principles and honesty. So we see some words occurring repeatedly: moral, principles, honesty, values. So this is what integrity means. So research integrity means applying these principles of integrity in the conduct of science. I'm sure many of you have heard about Surgisphere. In the last few weeks, Surgisphere has been talked about in newspapers, magazines, TV, and this is something where we in India have a very strong connect, as I'll show you. It all started with, nobody knew about Surgisphere about 2 months ago, and it started with publication of these papers, one in New England Journal of Medicine and the other in Lancet. And you can see some names which sound Indian: Mandeep Mehra, Sapan Desai, Amit Patel. And these were major papers in relation to the disease that we are talking about. One of these showed that in several thousand people in whom hydroxychloroquine or chloroquine had been used with or without a macrolide for treating COVID-19, there was no effect seen of using chloroquine or hydroxychloroquine. So this was an observational study based on data from several hospitals and observational data. The second one looked at relationship of COVID with another drug. Patients with cardiovascular disease who were receiving certain cardiovascular drugs which could be expected to have some interaction with the COVID, the virus responsible for COVID, and how it affected mortality. And these were major papers. As you can see by the journals that they were published in, they were much talked about. However, soon after they were published, concerns were raised. The major concern was, where were these data coming from? And these were coming from several large hospitals, we were told, in several different countries. And then some people said, they are talking about so many patients in Australia, but Australia till now has not had so many cases. And when the data were asked for, it turned out that data were from a database that was maintained by a company called Surgisphere, which is run by Dr. Sapan Desai, who's listed here, MD, PhD. And then initially they said, oh, there is a mistake, that thing is not in Australia but it is in Asia. Finally some other questions, and then they were asked to identify the hospitals from where they had data. There were questions and they did not provide the data. And finally a newspaper in UK, The Guardian, conducted an investigation, and this is what they found: that this US based company, Surgisphere, located near Illinois, had a handful of employees. They included a science fiction writer, a model for adult content material, and they had multiple studies. And when people looked at it, they could not explain their data, they could not explain their methodology, and they found many other things, including that this company had a very small office that could not have had data from several large hospitals in the world, and also that they had not previously published much. What did it result in? These papers were retracted. There has been a lot of questions. Not only have the authors lost face, these major journals in the world have lost face. Scientific research has lost face in the eyes of the general public, and it is looking at all biomedical research with a lot of questions. And this, you would agree with me, was misconduct. The principles of integrity that we talked about we talked about honesty, we talked about values, all those were not fulfilled, and this was anything but integrity. So in this background, let's look at research integrity. So in the US, there is a separate US Office of Research Integrity, which is outside the NIH. It's under the HHS, the department that looks after health services, and they have defined scientific misconduct, that means lack of research integrity, as fabrication, falsification or plagiarism in proposing, performing or reviewing research, or even in reporting research results. So there could be data which don't exist and have been fabricated, data that have been altered or falsified, and you've already heard Dr. Noel about plagiarism. Another way to look at scientific misconduct is that it is not a certain degree of misconduct. It can be something which can be very mild, which can be an honest error of judgment at times, to an outright fraud, which is what we heard in the case of Surgisphere just now. And this is a large variation, and things could lie anywhere on this spectrum. So let's look at how old research misconduct is, possibly very old. But when you try to look for literature, one of the first instances one finds is nearly 50 years ago in 1974, an immunologist by the name Summerlin, who was trying to work on transplantation, and he was trying to show that tissues, if they were stored in a certain manner, they could be transplanted and they would be taken by the other animal. So what he did was that he had rabbits, and he transplanted the skin of black rabbits onto the white rabbits. It didn't take, and his research was coming up for review, and if this failed, then he would not get further research grants. He took these rabbits, took a marker pen and painted parts of the skin where the patch could have been black, and took pictures and presented those for the review committee and got further grants. A lab tech got to know and served as a whistleblower, and when they treated this, cleaned the skin with alcohol, this ink went off, and this is the first very well recorded episode of research misconduct in modern day research. John Darcy, he was a fellow with Harvard University at Beth Israel Hospital with Eugene Braunwald, and some of you might know Eugene Braunwald as the editor of Harrison's Textbook of Medicine. Sorry, not Beth Israel, but Brigham and Women's Hospital in Harvard University. He was conducting experiments on animals, and these were multicentric studies. Eugene Braunwald was a big name, and it would so happen that the results from Harvard would be very different from the results that they would get in other centers. But Braunwald being Braunwald, these results were accepted. Till somebody complained, and they launched an investigation, and they found that this fellow called John Darcy, who was working for Eugene Braunwald, was actually making up results. And for some of the dogs on whom he had done experiment, where the heart was supposed to be removed and used for the experiment, when they exhumed the bodies of those dogs, they found that hearts were intact, they were still inside their bodies, so that means the experiments had never been done. This reached a stage when in 1994 the US Congress decided to investigate. That's a bit like our joint parliamentary committee, and they investigated the issue of research misconduct and found 57 cases. There have been many cases in the US, in many other countries, and in India, but I just wanted to tell you how brash some of these cases have been. So misconduct can mean unethical research. You would have or will hear about research ethics committee permission. So if you don't take permission, that unethical research is by itself scientific misconduct or lack of integrity. Fabrication, falsification, and in that I would add a very recent thing in the last few years, something called image manipulation. Plagiarism you have heard about, but there are minor forms, there is or less blatant forms: selective reporting of data, redundant publications, inappropriate authorship, and undeclared conflict of interests. And I'll try to take up each of these one by one. What is fabrication? One makes up results, or records them, and either this can be done while doing the experiments or when collecting the clinical data, but very often this happens when we are writing up research and we don't even realize that we are fabricating. You collect data on 100 patients. When you sit down with your chart, you find that for 5 patients you don't have age. What do? You tell your guide, sorry, I goofed up, I did not collect complete data, so I don't have these 5, so these need to be excluded, and say it in the paper that we had 100 consecutive patients, but 5 were excluded because we did not have data. Or I quietly drop these 5 patients and just say we had 95 patients, in which case we are doing some misconduct. Or I kind of try to recall from my memory what the patient's age was and write it up. Or I just fill up some information. Or I calculate the mean for the remaining 95, mean and SD, and say as if that is the mean and SD for all the 100. Each of these would be misconduct. So this is something, so a lot of misconduct actually happens while writing up research, and it may not even happen while conducting research, but not that the other part is not known. The second thing is falsification. You manipulate your cell culture, you manipulate your experiment, equipment or something so that the research is not accurately represented in the research record. You do not do a negative control, but you say that you've done a negative control. So you partly or completely change your results. This can happen with clinical data. Something is not fitting in, you change it a little bit. You have 50 patients, but you have only 40 controls. You expand the data, you extrapolate, as they say, or maybe I should actually say you fake the data for another 10. Increasingly, another thing that is happening is with photographs and pictures, and I'll show you some examples. So this is a paper published in a journal about 9 years ago, and we can see some images. This shows you what happened when cells were treated with different doses of curcumin and in different conditions, different doses on the x-axis and different conditions in the y-axis. And if you look at it closely, if you look at the red box, and later we will look at the green box, you can see the two images are fairly similar, except that some more cells start showing up. But all the cells that were seen at 0 minutes are being seen at 10 minutes, and these were supposed to be separate cultures. This was just because this image was exposed for a larger time and you get a larger number of dots. The number of cells that are show a certain thing increase from 3% to 23%. Let's look at the green box that I showed you. These two images don't have the same problem as the previous two images. They look very different. However, computer analysis shows that if you flip this image from left to right, so that this goes here and this goes here, we can see that this image and this image are identical. Authors had made up this figure by using the figure above, flipping it by 180 degrees and using it as the figure below. This, of course, is cheating, lack of integrity, manipulation of images. Similar gels, and you can see this and this are similar, except that this is the one on the right is slightly more exposed. And then there are combinations. If you see this image C, this part from here has come here, this part from here has come here, but is slightly overexposed, and this is what has been happening, and this is not acceptable. This is considered as fraud, lack of integrity, so on. These are two different embryos produced using different conditions, and if you see the way light is reflecting from each of them, you can see that they are identical. The authors thought that the reviewer, readers, nobody would pick it up. Today there are tools available which will pick up whether an image has been modified after it was taken by a camera, and most good journals employ such tools and they would catch you. Then this was pictures. Let's look at data, and there is this paper published by 3 authors in the US about all the papers published from a certain department of an institution in India. And their point was that if you look at the ratio of SD standard deviation to the mean of some 100 values that appear in each paper, you find that their SD is always about 1/3 of the means. This cannot happen if things were to happen at random. And they wrote a big paper about this, and the university faced a lot of flack, and those authors working in biochemistry department of that institution obviously got a bad name. So all this happens. Look at this, another paper published from India. We regret to report that transcription errors occurred in the supplementary appendix. That means the data that were given in the supplementary appendix were not right. There were multiple errors in the table on figure 18 and 19. Somebody went through those data very carefully and found that the detailed data that were available in the supplementary appendix did not match the data in the main paper. For instance, if in the supplementary appendix you have a table of patients and you have their ages, the mean age in the main chart will not match the data in the age given in the supplementary appendix, something like that. And so questions were raised, and then they said primary data could not be located. When the journal contacted the authors, they said, sorry, we don't have individual forms of these patients, and therefore it was very difficult to find out what was true. This paper, published in New England Journal of Medicine about 9 years from a major Indian institution, had to be retracted for this reason. So it is very important that your data are collected and reported with integrity. Another thing is plagiarism, and Dr. Noel has just talked to you about it. Plagiarism is a type of piracy which involves use of other people's ideas and words without permission or acknowledgement. It's become very common because of the use of internet, cut and copy and paste techniques. So he's talked about that. I am not going to go into details, but I thought I'll refer to self-plagiarism or repetitive publication. Self-plagiarism is when one plagiarizes one's own text. Some people think that it's an anachronism, that there is nothing called self-plagiarism. Of course, if I copy from myself, that cannot be counted as stealing. However, you should know that when you write and you give it to the journal, you give the copyright to the journal, and then you are copying it from the journal. The bigger problem is when you have two papers which are identical, which are reporting the same thing. If there is a small overlap between what you wrote in one article and the other, people would overlook this. They understand that if you were to write the same thing repeatedly, you would write the same way. But when you have the same data reported repeatedly, so if you look at this article has been regretfully retracted due to significant plagiarism. So this was for copying, but at times this can be your own data because you have copied and you have repetitive publication, and that is not acceptable. And this is an example of that. So this is an author who says, I retract the image in clinical medicine, published in New England Journal of Medicine, because I had previously submitted it elsewhere and it has already been published. Reference 2, reference 3 in Circulation Journal and Heart. Same person publishing the same thing thrice, and this may or may not be called plagiarism, but at least is repetitive publication, and this is again considered as lack of integrity. Some of these things are extremely common in India, so much so that in Wikipedia there is a separate page for plagiarism done by Indian scientists. And there are some variations of repetitive publication called salami. When you do one study and you divide it into 3 parts or 2 parts and publish separately, so you collect data on a series of patients, you publish one paper on clinical features, the other on diagnosis, and the third on treatment. That's not really repetitive publication, but still it is very close to it, and that is not acceptable. The other thing, some people call it as imalas by just using the opposite sequence of letters as in salami. Basically, they are papers that report the same thing first in 50 patients, then in 70 patients, then in 90 patients, and so on. And message does not change, and this is also not considered acceptable. Even if you were to do this and you think separate papers make sense, you need to tell the journal that you had data, you have divided it into 3 papers and you are submitting it to 3 different places, and for each paper you attach the other 2 manuscripts so that journals can assess whether they still want to publish your data or not. Same way, if you have similar data but on a larger number of patients on a longer follow up, tell the journal that you had published the data previously and attach a copy of the previous paper, let them judge. Medical ethics, you must have heard, so I am going to skip this part. There are other things that happen in research. You are wanting to try a new drug. You want to show that this new drug works. If you have already 3 drugs available and you choose the weaker of those 3 drugs or a lower dose of the comparator drug compared to a good dose of your current drug, that is cheating, because you are not working towards the betterment of the human knowledge. It would be best that if you use the best possible comparator that is already available, or you use a higher dose of the competitor's drug so that the adverse events would be higher with that drug. Another common thing is to use multiple endpoints. You measure 10 things and then at the end you report that you measured only 2 things and report only data for those endpoints that show improvement and not fail to report the other 8. What you have done is it's equivalent to firing a gun and then drawing the circles rather than having a target with circles and shooting the gun at it. You got some results and then you have chosen which one fits in. Or if you do a study and you get negative results, you do not publish them. The problem is that when people do meta-analysis, then these results will not be included and the drug would appear to be very positive. For the last 2, to check those, registration of clinical trials has been started, and but there are still lacunae. Another issue that one needs to talk about when talking about research integrity is conflict of interest. Conflict of interest is a situation when there is a divergence between an individual's personal interests and his responsibilities to science. For instance, if I do trial on a drug made by a drug company X, in which I, my wife or other members of my family have shares, so that if the drug is useful, the share price of the drug company will go up and I would gain. That is a conflict of interest. If I so all these kind of things, these could be important and these need to be revealed at the time of when you are proposing research. When it's being considered by an ethics committee, you need to reveal it to your patients and to journal editors. Why does misconduct happen? Some people think that this is because of the culture of publish or perish. In many countries, if you do not publish, you will not be able to retain your job, your research funding would go. In our setup, it doesn't happen that frequently. More often it is greed. People do it for the sake of promotions, for the sake of fame, for the sake of monetary rewards. Some cases, which are the extreme cases where people have published 1 paper every 15 days, etc., have been actually more akin to a mental illness. In some situations, it has been found that the person who resorted to misconduct actually had a feeling that by doing this they were helping humanity. They were finding a drug which would be of use to people. They weren't sure that it would work, but they still thought, because they seriously believed in that drug, so they used that drug. So finally, to summarize, the message I want to leave with you is, if you wish to do research, whether for a short period like for your thesis, or you want to make this into your profession, it needs a very high level of integrity. This can be achieved only through meticulous attention to detail. Anything and everything that you do, you must make a record of that on the same day at the same time. Training is useful and frequent supervision is useful. It is very useful if your guide calls you every few days to look at the data. that forces you to look at the patient performance, the data collection sheets, questionnaires very early, so that you can find out if you are missing out some things, if there are things that you have not recorded, because they are much easier to collect at that time, or at least to correct the method by which you collect data for the remaining patients than to find missing data at the end. And to do this, we need the institutions and investigators, where I include the people who are primarily collecting data as well as their supervisors, and both these groups need to pay attention. Thank you. If there are any questions, I'll take those up.